Hello YouTube, Ronin Kazy. Got some phlegm in my voice. Hey, we're back with another comparison yet of 5 Linux distros playing a game, Cyberpunk 2077. Well, we have a usual cast of characters. We have Arch, that's running first. Arch ran great during this run. CachyOS, Endeavor, Manjaro, and the never to be mentioned again Garuda is back in the fold. Now, this Arch run was great. The frames were great throughout the run, so I don't know why. I did update it. I made sure I updated everything. Probably some of this is my methodology. Maybe I'm not 100%. But let me talk about Garuda for a second. So I last mentioned Ultramarine. Sorry, everyone. I want to put something out there. Number one, the Linux distribution you choose should be able to play games. Now, my default system is an AMD. It's one of those newer AMD processors with a pretty whoop-de-doo APU. Basically, if you saw that silver benchmark I did, it's like double what my laptop does. It has an AMD integrated graphics, but it's great. And in my laptop, it's a 1650. But it's an NVIDIA. So it does have an integrated graphics, but back then they were horrible. So if you have a laptop that has integrated graphics and a discrete NVIDIA, you're going to need to run NVIDIA graphics. So as I was doing Ultramarine, and then when I started trying to do it in games, it ran, 11 frames per second because it didn't have the drivers. When I had used Fedora previously, now we're on the Kachy run. The Kachy run's kind of consistent, but it is lower than the Arch. When I've used Fedora before, it had a built-in thing where it put in more light needed. You're getting as much light as you're getting, computer. Geez, oh Pete, don't get old. When I used Ultramarine, when I used Fedora before, Fedora had a little thing where it would load NVIDIA. Linux Mint loads NVIDIA pretty easy. So if you're not using Arch-based distro and you want an old distro that doesn't work and it's not up to date, then you could use Linux Mint. So then I said, well, let me get Nibbara. So I went through a bunch more distros, loaded them up, and they just never worked. Just never worked right out of the box. So I was asking AI about Garuda, and at the bottom of the list is a vanilla KDE Garuda, and I got that, and I was really happy with that. And it still has the tools, and I loaded all the software, so I would recommend Garuda. Now, I'd recommend Garuda if you'd like to have base, but if you want to live on the wild side, Garuda's the distro for you. And it's Arch-based, and it updates great like all Arch ones do, and I was really happy with it. So, I was wrong, right, to throw Garuda out. But what I want to tell you in all this is I'm actually using them, actually installing them, actually running them, actually benchmarking them. And I just would say it's not even close using other distros. And if you're going to have a laptop, most laptops nowadays, unless you get something, this is Endeavor running. And Endeavor ran pretty well also, you can see right off the bat. But the thing that makes me nervous, it gets down in the 41s. It's thrown some 50s up there, but then every once in a while it goes into 41s. But it was not bad either. I guess at a certain point when I'm done doing all these Arch distros, I will compare it to older. But I don't think it's fair to compare a kernel that's like a whole, it's on 7.1 versus a 6.1 kernel. My light went off. During all this also, right? So I'm loading all these different distros and running them over and over, loading them. They're blowing up my bootloader nonstop. So what had happened is I eventually had overwritten Refind. Refind works like this. In your boot EFI, which should be like 2 gigabytes, it will put the stuff there, but it also lives on the partition that you installed Refind from. So like that has files there, and that's where you can kind of control things and do things from there, I guess. When I was installing NVIDIA, I didn't identify the boot EFI where I wanted to put the boot EFI. So in the space I had allotted for the partition, which used to be Garuda, it wrote a new boot EFI and used the rest. So it was only 2 gigabytes smaller, but used the rest for NVIDIA. Problem was, now I had 2 boot EFIs. At one point I got a strange message, "You've run out of room on your boot EFI." I'm like, how is that possible? And then when I examined it, when you're installing these multiple OSs, like this is the process you have to do. You always got to define where's the boot going to be. And then Calamari's, here's Garuda running now. And it started off good too. But then you see, as soon as you get in those 40s, I don't like it because Arch was just strong. Every time you load, when you're doing a multi-boot install, you got to know where the boot EFI is and where your root partition is. And Calamari's, what it will do is you identify the boot EFI partition, but then you say don't format it. So it knows to use that. And I'd also recommend this. I'd recommend installing Cachy as your #1. Or Arch if you can get it to do Refind, but I'd install Refind as my first boot manager, and then I'd load everything else as Grub. Grub will keep appending the distributions to like the last. So Garuda being last, it took all the installations and put them on there in order. But if it messes up, I always got Refind that I can go to. So just trust me. Now someone would say, I'm just telling you, I've liked that I've had Refind available. I was going to go deep into Refind and figure out how to do this, that, and the third. That's not the point of the channel, is not to spend your time with the operating system. I can tell you when I'm using these 5 operating systems, I don't have to do a lot. They're all configured roughly the same. I do the same thing each time on each distribution. So they start fading out into the back, which if I didn't try to load other distributions, I'd say I used to say every Linux distro is the same. Not really the same. There's little tricks and tweaks that they do that makes the distributions different. But if you don't have a rolling release, you're stuck with a long-term, snapshot of where you're at, and then you're going to have not the newest software from them. I can't even imagine doing that. I might as well load OS 2 back and run DOS, like if we're going to do that. Like if I'm going to make myself use older software that's not up to date, I might as well just use DOS and say, well, having a text editor is just good enough. Can't have it both ways, Linux people, and that's the kind of thing that I run into. There's people that have bigger channels than I do that will recommend Linux Mint but don't use it and don't understand the negatives about having a piece of software that's frozen in time. Also, I've had other people say, oh, I use this, that, and that. If it doesn't automatically put NVIDIA drivers on there and you have an NVIDIA GPU, they're like, well, what are we doing, right? What are we doing? And Cachy does that. Endeavor did that. Garuda did that. Manjaro did that. And Arch did that, right? and I just didn't have a problem. So like when I threw on a game, it ran at, you know, what I'm expecting it to run at. So Manjaro's crappy. It's the first one I did. I had to zoom it up a bunch. You can't see it was the worst frame rates of everyone. If I had to vote someone off the island, I'm not going to do that because last time I did that, I had to eat crow. YouTube. I had to eat a lot of crow because Garuda made it back. They're in the cut. They're above the cut. But if I had to think of one, but I got to figure out why. So this is Ronin Kazy. Not going to do Cyberpunk anymore. You got a general idea of the different distros and how they run. And I got a notification. So this is Ronin Kazy. Bye, YouTube.